I don't know why we wouldn't want to provide parents with the tools to make a responsible, educated decision for their child. And I testified to that with Lieberman, who was very appreciative, and Hillary Rosen. And I didn't get blackballed by them. They continued to love me after that, but they were pissed. And then I also did something that angered Lieberman, because Chuck D was in the back of the room. You know how when you testify, you have to get vetted by the committee. Like when you visit the White House, your mother's maiden name, your Social Security, they do a background check. And Chuck didn't do that, and he came because he wanted to testify, and they wouldn't let him testify because he wasn't vetted properly. And when I finished, I pushed out my stool and I turned to the back of the room and I pointed to Chuck and I was like, "Yo, you want to come up? You want to talk?" And he just jumped out of the chair, and I looked back at Lieberman and he was shaking his head. He was not happy. He was not happy. And I had like my what I joke around, and I don't mean this in any controversial way. It's just a joke between Chuck D and I had my like Rosa Parks moment. I gave the black man his chance to come up and testify. Chuck used to laugh with me that he wasn't vetted, but I let him swap out, and there's nothing Lieberman could do about it. I just said
they're not going to make a scene, right? Yeah, they're not going to make a scene.
And guess what? His testimony did not agree with me. He was testifying with Valenti, but the fact of the matter is, Valenti and Hillary Rosen were paid by the recording industry and by the film industry to protect the product. And if you put a rating system on it, the sales drop. It cost the recording industry money. The record labels were paying Hillary. Sorry, Hillary. And I just said, I want to provide parents with the tools to protect their children, period.
I feel like if I ask why 5 times, it's always money. It's always profit. Anything that I don't understand on its face. I don't know if I told you guys this story, but the first time Eric ever heard me speak, we had just met a few days prior. I was speaking publicly. And after, he came up and complimented me, and he said, "I can't tell if you're a liberal conservative or a conservative liberal." And I thought it was so funny. But I have really stressed that my work is apolitical, right? We're talking about public safety. We're talking about suffering. It has nothing to do with politics. And it has been affirming that folks generally agree with what I'm saying because I'm anchored in this ethic. And I think we should all agree, right? This person's life has value. What would be the best response in this moment? And so I'm curious about that. I mean, Robert, you've spent all this time, advocating for sensible response to homelessness and other kinds of human suffering. What do you think has happened? I mean, why isn't everyone agreeing at a national level on these issues the way I perceive we are here?
I think that it goes back to people on the left think they got to play to the left, and people on the right got to play to the right. I'm a former elected official. I've worked in 3 or 4 administrations in a paid way, and I've worked in 2 or 3 administrations in a volunteer way at the national level. And what I think is that one of the tools I try to teach my graduate students is don't make it personal. Don't bring up any names. Don't bring up parties. Let's just talk about the policy.
Right.
What is the logical approach for this issue, and start breaking it down? And if you can free yourself of that, then you go to logic. And, right now, I think this is my personal view, that homelessness really for the last 10 years took a swing to the far wokey left. And I think some it was because of that was their response. They wanted to do it. Some of it, I think, was very sincere, and they were trying it way, but it did not work. We have tripled the spending in homelessness funding over the last 12 years, and homelessness is now doubling in many parts of the country. In your home city, Seattle, is now doubling every 3.8 years, and the rest of the country is doubling every 5 years. So it didn't work, and some it was sort of orthodox ideology. Others was a good faith, try to make a change, but it didn't work. So we gotta, Billy and I've toured around a lot, and we, of all places, we heard it from somebody at a rescue mission in Seattle, and they said compassion without accountability is enablement. And it just perfectly summed up what I've been talking about for the last 15 years, that we got to get when we do other grants in federal government, when you give a Pell Grant out for college, you have to attend class 88.5% of the time. You have to have a C minus or above average. You have to do it in 4 or 5 years, whatever your grant process is. But with homelessness, we were just giving away vouchers, and you didn't even have to see your case manager. You didn't have to go to treatment. You didn't have to go to recovery. But in a Pell Grant, you have to do things. When you get TANF, you have to do things. When you get unemployment insurance, you have to do things. But somehow in the world of homelessness, this sort of attempt to make it, sort of a reactionary to one side, we got out of balance. And most of my calls now, I get are from Democrat mayors saying, how have you done this in other cities? And so, and this overlaps the fentanyl issue and substance abuse. And I think a lot of people missed nationally because of the presidential election that California voters voted 2-1 to recriminalize high-end drugs and high-volume drugs in November and went against the California legislature. And this is blue state voters. Yeah. So I think that it's ironic is sort of the elite politics have gone to the extremes. The common sense middle America is trying to get to the middle. And I don't think that's being talked about a lot, that average citizens are saying, we don't want a food fight. We want people to try to figure out how to make things work.
Yeah. Everything has changed since COVID and with fentanyl. We live in a totally new world. I mean, the COVID numbers have obviously come down, but the fentanyl numbers are at an unprecedented level. We've never experienced anything like this before. And I'm going to sound like a Republican when I say the next several things that I say, but I'm not uncomfortable with it at all. I think a lot of the policies.
There's room for you to come over, Billy.
I think I think a lot of people on the left would agree with me. Just let me riff on a couple of these things. One is that the policies of the left in the Pacific Northwest, from the Bay Area up through Spokane and Seattle, where you have compassion without accountability, were very well intended. 15 years later, we're realizing they're not working as well as they had hoped, and we have to sort of course correct. To take a mentally ill, addicted person off of the streets and put them into housing is a wonderful thing. Now you have a mentally ill, addicted person that's in housing, and your problem has not gone away. Right. So this low bar, no bar has to course correct. And with fentanyl and COVID, we now have the numbers rising so dramatically. I don't know how they've changed in Spokane, Seattle. I think in Sacramento, they went from 4,000 to 17,000. In LA, they went 54,000 to 76,000. That was all over COVID. And the fentanyl crisis is we drastic times call for drastic measures. I don't believe all the people on the left that are saying they have a right to do this. Yeah. It is part of their freedom to do this. They have a right to do this. They are free to do this, but not for you to have to pay for it.
Correct.
They go every time. And you have to be. I use this term now. You have to be bilingual. When I go into the state legislature or when I go to the Capitol, even back then, 30 years ago, I was bilingual. I spoke one language when I spoke to Democrats, and I spoke another language when I spoke to Republicans. When I was trying to get funding for the NEA, Democrats, I would say, what I said before, pushing the envelope of artistry and how reflecting what's going on in our lives and in our culture. Different for you or me than it was for a rap artist in Compton, right? Mm-hmm. When I talked to Republicans, I talked about the economic impact of that $25,000 grant that you gave and the multiplier, how that $25,000 grant triggered our $350,000 of economic activity by giving that grant. Yeah. They were like, really? And they turned to their chief of staff and say, are those numbers real? Are they right? Are they accurate? Chief of staff would say, yeah. He goes, okay, I can get behind a $10,000 increase for the NEA. I do the same thing on homelessness. They say, wow, that sounds really expensive. Like, how are we going to pay for that? I said, you're already paying too much. You're already paying a huge price to not do enough. Every time they call, and where you guys live, they can call 911 on the same person overdosing multiple times in a day. Yep. So you call 911, fire department, paramedics, sheriff, cops, nonprofits, taxpayers paying. They go to the emergency room, you're paying. They're admitted, you're paying. They go into the judicial system, judges, lawyers, courts, you're paying. Incarcerated, you're paying. Then you go downtown, Department of Commerce, Department of Tourism, Small Business Administration, property values dropping, the ranking of your public education system, your quality, it's all being affected.